have a lunchtime speaker, exoneree Roosevelt Glenn. You've heard a tremendous amount of his story from Fran Watson over the last hour. If you want to read more, he's written a phenomenal book. I actually read this book just before the hearing in April of 2016, and I was very much taken with his story. It was very emotional. I had given the slides and the practice the hearing over at Duquesne University in Cyril Weck's class. He was out, so I had his class to practice on. And as I was Ubering back to Squirrel Hill, I got the text from Fran that said there's no hearing. They gave up. That was very nice. So I didn't make it out. I actually first met Roosevelt last night. And so he's going to be telling you about his conviction for, emotional conviction. No, we're talking about both convictions. And his belief in truth and science and justice. Okay. A warm Pittsburgh welcome for Roosevelt Glenn.
Good afternoon, everybody. Excuse me if I'm a little nervous and excited. I don't have any computer skills, but I wrote myself a little note so I stay on track. I want to thank Dr. Perlin for inviting me here. This is truly a blessing for me and my family. This is a story that I know is not new, but I feel is one that needs to be told, and someone needs to hear it. And when I was in prison, I used to just think every day that I wanted somebody to hear my story on how the system, because I believed in the system. And I was a hard-working man, never been in trouble with the law. And I just couldn't believe what was happening before my own eyes, so I began to write this book while I was in prison. I didn't know how to do a book or anything like that, but I just knew I had the right to tell somebody what happened to me. It's like I was snatched away from my life for no reason. So, it's hard because I've been through hell, but I made it. And while in this prison for a crime I didn't commit, there were situations where I had to stare death in the eyes. I had suicidal thoughts. I wanted to give up on life, hope. I was told I wouldn't amount to anything. I was society's reject now. But I put my faith in God above because he was the only one who could help me internally. And that's what changed my mindset. I began to feel that I could now look at death in the eyes and tell it to be still because it wasn't time yet. I took suicide off my back because it wasn't time. Low self-esteem, hopelessness, be gone because I'm going to make it. And I believe my faith in God is what turned all of that around. I didn't accept what people were telling me, what the newspaper was saying about me. I couldn't accept it because it wasn't me. And I truly would like to thank Professor Watson for never giving up hope, for never giving up the fight for justice. She's an angel in my eyes. And I thank her every time I see her, every time I talk on the phone. I can't help it. I see her now, I want to run and hug her because she never gave up. I mean, I'm talking about we lost at least 6 or 7 appeals, just me, not counting Mr. Pinkins. But I never gave up hope, and she never gave up hope, and she kept fighting. And every time she come to see me, I say, keep fighting. Don't give up, because I'm not giving up in here. But she reached out to Dr. Greg Hampikian, And I'm so thankful that she reached out to Dr. Greg Hampikian, because he saw my innocence before he even met me. And I thank you very, very much, because that changed a lot inside me when I heard Professor Watson and Dr. Greg Hampikian speaking of my innocence, and they didn't even know me. That meant the world to me. And I'm so glad and thankful to Dr. Hampikian that he never gave up. And he kept reaching and reaching and reaching until he touched Dr. Perlin. And I thank you, Dr. Hampikian, for reaching out to Dr. Perlin. And Dr. Perlin, I can't even put the words together, but just say you're a genius. And I appreciate you, and you just don't know how much this has meant to me and my family. Because my family never gave up hope. Because they knew me and they knew my character. Oh, man. And right now, it's my opinion and my belief that I believe we have found one of the keys to justice in the form of TrueAllele. And I would tell anybody that would object to it, oppose to it, to talk to me. A man who's sitting in a cage nearly 17 years for something he didn't do. Just talk to me. I'll tell you what it's like to sit in a cage for nothing. Or you could talk to a sister who gave up her life and put it on hold, put her children on hold to go be a voice for her brother, knocking on doors, mailing letters. Or a wife who had to tell her little daughter, Daddy won't be home. He won't be able to ride you on his back no more. No more McDonald's. But why, Daddy? That's a good question. We never... Okay. And then there's the story. I'm going to get through this. There's a story of my mom. A lady who prayed for 17 years. That she lived long enough to see her son released from prison. And she got it. She got to see her son walk out of prison. But she didn't stop praying, because now she had to pray for her son to get his good name back, to get his name cleared. Because when I left prison, I was still a convicted sex offender on parole. So Mama continued to pray that her son, that she lived long enough to see her son's name cleared, and he get his good name back. And she got it. Because on January the 28th, 2017, I was officially cleared and charges and everything was dismissed. I was exonerated. And on July the 28th, my mom passed. But she got her wishes. And we buried her August the 5th. And at the funeral, when I looked at her, it looked like she had a smile. But I didn't want to say nothing because I didn't want everybody thinking he's going crazy. So I didn't say nothing. But after the services was over and me and my family, we got together and everybody sitting around eating, and I began to ask people, I say, did they do a good job on Mom? How did Mom look? Everybody said, oh, looked like she had a little smile. I said, oh my God. She's resting in peace. Thank you, Dr. Pearlin. She's resting in peace. Now, there is a story to how I became a defendant and ultimately convicted. Like Professor said, it was a rash of attacks happening in Northwest Indiana where women who drove alone was being bumped, faked accidents, and when they get out the car, they would be attacked. It started out with just robberies, and then it got more in depth to violence, battery, and then it became a rape. And on December 7th, which Professor has told you, this victim was raped. And on that night of December the 7th, 1989, I was working at Lurie Brothers. It was a contractor at Bethlehem Steel Mill. And unfortunately that day, I didn't drive myself to work. My car was being in the shop. It was going to be taken to the shop the next morning. But anyway, I caught a ride to work that day, and getting off work, two other guys that I worked with, they were saying they was going to cash their paychecks, and I said, that's great, because I can cash my paycheck and go straight on, take my car to the shop in the morning and have the cash. So on our way home en route, we took 8094, heading westbound to Gary from Portage, Indiana. And he began to experience car trouble. And when he started having trouble, he made his way over to the shoulder, getting out off the expressway. It was like 20 below zero with the wind chill that night. And we worked outside, so we were very dressed. And so when he pulled the car over, he got out and he said, oh man, he checked it. He said, he's out of oil. I said, oh, you driving the car with no oil? You got to be kidding me. How old are you? And he said he must have sprung a leak or something. But anyway, the three of us, it was like our Friday, but it was a Wednesday. We was off Thursday and Friday. So anyway, the three of us got out the car and began walking down Broadway. Walking down 8094 going to the Broadway exit. When the state trooper pulled up, he said, hey, is this you guys' car? I said, yeah, we're going to get some help now. And he said, okay, I'll make a note of that so they won't be told or anything. So I said, okay, and he took off. I said, man, he could have gave us a ride, just 20 below. He took off and went on about his business. I'm like, wow, he didn't give us a ride. So we made it to a phone booth, and I called a lady, a friend of mine at the time. She came and picked us up. We dropped her off. We went and cashed our paychecks. And upon returning to the car, Mr. Durden got out the car to jump in. I was going to get behind him and push it off the car so I can give him a boost or anything or whatever he needed. So we just wanted to get the car off the highway. So when I began to push him, he was making gestures. And I didn't know. I said, get in the car. It's cold. And semis coming by. I said, get in the car. I couldn't hear him. So when I pushed him up on the Broadway exit, I did a U-turn, got in front of him, got bumper to bumper, popped my hood, jumped out. That's when we noticed he was trying to tell us that his windows had been busted out. And I said, oh, man. I said, well, they didn't get nothing but some dirty old work clothes and some leftover sandwiches. Ain't nobody concerned about that. So anyway, we went on with our business. He went home. I went home. That night was over with. I'm trying to rush through it. So 2 days later, we went back to work, which was a Saturday. The office is closed. So we waited till that Monday, and the three of us went in and reported to the management that our coveralls were stolen out of Mr. Durden's car. No problem. Get new coveralls. They're plentiful. So anyway, we didn't think nothing of it. We went on. We were working and everything, and Now, mind you, this was December the 7th, 1989. Now it's January the 2nd, 1990. I'm at work, and the foreman comes up to I'm on the north end of the plant, and the foreman comes up, and he said, Mr. Glenn, we're having a safety meeting. And I said, safety meeting? Wow, that's good. I'm thinking I'm getting ready to get an award because I had pulled a guy out of a conveyor belt, and he had got his arm caught. And they big on safety, so I'm thinking, okay, I'm getting ready to get an award. They're getting ready to recognize me. Right, so I'm feeling good. I'm all hyped up to go down here and get this award. So when it came time, it was supposed to be at 7 o'clock. I jumped in. I was driving the payloader that day. So I jumped in the big dozer, and I was driving it down to the south end of the plant. And I see guys going into what we call a wash house. And I see the guys going in, so I park the dozer, get up, go up there, and everybody's taking seats, standing around, sitting down. And then the plant manager came. I was like, ooh, plant manager? What does he do? He never here after dark. I'm like, the plant manager, what's really going on? And then so he began to write on the chalkboard, talked about occurrences and safety issues, and we were sitting there, and then it was a knock on the door, boom, 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 and some guys came in with suit coats, jackets, and there was a young lady with them as well. So my mind, now this is my mind running crazy. I'm like, wow, representatives of the company. I hope the guy didn't die or something. You know, this is really big. They got representatives coming to bring an award. And then they began to call off names. Calling off names. And they said, Roosevelt Glenn. I said, yeah, that's me. Get on the ground. Like, what? Get on the ground? And he said, get on the ground now. And I seen him push one guy, so I got on the ground. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? You're playing, right? You're playing. This ain't no joke. This ain't no way to play. So when they put the cuffs on, I said, no, they ain't playing. And when we got outside, I seen police cars everywhere. I'm like, woo, this is no joke. What is going on? So I'm asking the officer once I got in the police car, what's going on? What am I supposed to have done? What's going on? I haven't did nothing. No, I'm wondering, I'm scratching my head. Wait, did I have a beer the other day when I was driving? Was I driving under the influence or something? I'm trying to think, what could they possibly be arresting me for? But how would they know that? Nobody never stopped me. So I'm thinking, what is going on? So when we get to the police station, they put us in all different cells. They arrested 5 of us that night. So they put us in different cells. So we began to holler at each other. Hey, what's going on, man? If you know something about this, you better come on and speak up. I got to go home. And everybody said they didn't know what was going on. So finally, after hours went by, they came to my cell, and they pulled me out. So I'm saying, wow. I said, so you found out you made a mistake? And he said, no, go have a seat in here, will you? So I went in this room, and these 2 big detectives came in. And so I'm looking at them. I said, what you do? You found out you made a mistake? They say, no. You know what you done. I say, no, what did I do? And they told me that I was involved with a rape. And I went, I'm surprised I'm still living, because I snapped. What? I said a few choice words, and then they had the big guy say, sit down. I sat down. And then they went on and on. This went on for hours trying to tell me I committed this crime. So when I wouldn't confess, they took me back to the cell. I'm quite sure that's what they done to the other guys. But I went back to the cell, like I sat in there for more hours. It just seemed like hours. I don't know really what time it was. But anyway, they came back, and they brought me back in again. And then this time, they had the green coveralls, and they threw them on the desk. Boom. Aren't these your coveralls? I say, they look like my coveralls. I had a pair on when you arrested me. I reported a pair stolen. Which pair is it? I don't know. And then he was saying, no, these are the ones you left at the rape and robbery of a Hammond woman on December the 7th. I said, man, come on. We done been through this already. I haven't done nothing to no woman. And then the other detective walks up and he said, well, Mr. Glenn, let me tell you something. He was the nice guy. He said, let me tell you something, Mr. Glenn. You're the youngest of the group. And you have an opportunity to help yourself. And the way you can do that is by working with us. And I said, working with you? How am I going to work with you? He said, well, we know that the guys overpowered you. You tried to help the victim, but they overpowered you. And at that time, you just gave up the fight and let them do what they done. So you didn't rape her, right? I said, right. I didn't rape her. He said, but the guys, I said, man, I wasn't nowhere with any guys attacking any woman. He said, well, I'm going to tell you now, we giving you opportunity to go ahead and flip on them guys, and you'll save yourself a lot of heartache because you're facing 120 years. I said, 120 years? For what? He said, we're not going to keep going over this. You know what you've done. Sign right here. Read this and sign it. I looked at it, and I looked at him. I said, take me back to the cell. Lock me up, if that's what you want. Because I would never admit to hurting and attacking a woman. I don't care what the situation was. If I know I didn't do it, that's one thing my grandfather always taught me. Take your whoopings when you deserve them. But if you don't, stand up to them. And that's what I told him. I ain't do it. I ain't signing nothing. I'm not admitting to anything. So after all that, I guess they did that to everybody. Now it was daylight. And I didn't understand the effect of what had happened until they put us in the paddy wagons and took us to the county jail. And when we came out of the Hammond City jail, I seen all these cameras and stuff. I'm like, oh my goodness. I know that ain't TV. I hope that ain't TV because my sister, my mom, they gonna have a fit. They see me in cuffs getting in the paddy wagon. Oh man, that's gonna kill them. So anyway, we go to the Lake County jail, and I saw myself on television, and I said, oh, can I please make a phone call? Because my mom, my sister, my family, they got to be a wreck by now. So hours went by, they finally let me make the call. I called my family, and long story short, I just told them, I don't even know what they're talking about. And they say, well, we'll get you a lawyer. I said, no, you ain't got to spend no money on no lawyer. I haven't done anything. System, they'll figure it out. So my sister, she was like, well, okay, we're going to get down and see you as soon as we can. Anyway, I ended up in the county jail for 3 months. And it was some brutal fighting. But thanks be to God, wasn't none with me. And one day they came to my cell and they said, Glenn, you going to court? I said, going to court? It wasn't even my court date. So I'm like, what? I said, they got to, well, okay, I'm going to get up and get ready, but it's not my court date. My court date is next month. They say, no, you're on the court list. So when we get down to the courtroom, I see my family sitting in there and the lawyer sitting there. I'm like, what is going on? And then when I walk up, the lawyer says, are you ready to go? I was ready to go the first day. What you mean, am I ready to go? And he said, well, DNA don't link you to the crime. I said, I know it don't link me to the crime. It can't link me to the crime. He said, yeah, they're getting ready to let you guys out. They let us go. I went back to work. So I'm thinking this was over. I'm moving on with my life. And a month later, my attorney called me and said, you're going to trial. What? Trial? Yeah, they got snitches now that said you confessed while you was in the county jail. And they believe they have a hair of yours on the victim's sweater. I say, run every test you get. That's not my hair. He said, well, I'm telling you what they say. And now they're saying that you may be included through serology testing. I said, what is serology testing? Your blood type. They found types A, B, and O. You're type O. I'm like, wow, really? I wonder how many other people in Gary, Indiana is O, But anyway, Mr. Pinkins, when Durden went, he got a hung jury. Mr. Pinkins went, they convicted him. I got instantly scared because the lawyers were saying they didn't have enough evidence to convict us. So I'm like, what do I do now? So I got on the phone, I called my uncle, and I said, Uncle, I need some money. He said, what's going on? I say, I got to run. He said, run where? I said, this ain't right, man. They getting ready to take me to court. Pinkins been convicted this morning. He said, what? I said, yeah. I said, I need some money. He said, well, nephew, I'll give you anything you want. But if you didn't rape that woman, don't run. Life on the run is no fun. I said, well, they convicted him. He said, well, nephew, I'm just telling you what I know. And I love you, and I give you anything you want, but I'm giving you my advice. So I stayed. I fought it, hung jury the first time. Second time I got convicted. And it was like I was in a fog. When they said guilty, I was like, I couldn't hear anything. But all of a sudden I heard the scream of my family. And that just like woke me up. And I was looked over at them. I said, it's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. I can handle this. So right then I realized I had to toughen up. Because they were hurting more than I was. At least they thought. I was hurting pretty bad. But anyway, I went off to prison. Scared. Never been locked up before. Have all these thoughts about prison. First entry into prison, it was just like the television says, fresh meat. So I'm walking through and I wanted to react when they started making these calls. And the guy behind me, he said, He said, don't do that. Because now you're inviting them to come at you. Don't say nothing, just keep walking, let them have their fun. And I said, well, who are you? He said, oh, this is my third trip. I said, man, help me. But anyway, we get into the prison, and long story short, about 1 year being into the prison, I finally realized that my anger wasn't the answer. Because I was bitter, I was angry at the system, and everyone I thought that had something to do with putting me in prison, I now hated, and I wanted revenge. I wanted somebody to feel my pain. But after that 1 year, my sister came to see me, and they came to tell me about my brother that got killed. And then somebody really had to feel my pain. I was so furious then, when these cells open, somebody gonna feel my pain. But the cells never opened. And that was strange because the whole prison went on lockdown for 90 days. So for 90 days, I was sitting in that cell realizing that I was only hurting myself with the anger and the bitterness and the want of revenge. So that was at the time when I really changed my faith. Because I was a good man before I went to prison, but I wasn't a man of faith. And prison changed my way of thinking. I wanted to know, how can I make myself a better man, even than the man I was before I came to prison, which I thought I was a good man. So I began to work on myself regardless, and I began to forget about the conviction. And I began to focus on how can I present myself to my family once I come out of this. Because I know I'm going home, because I got 36 years to 18. So one day I'm going home, and I wasn't going to let the prison destroy me. I wasn't a bad guy when I went. I wasn't going to turn bad because of my environment. So I began to get into different courses that help you. Self-help programs. They had a plus program, houses of healing. When you get on the right path, stay on the right path. They had all these instructors come there teaching, but nobody hardly really cared about them because there wasn't no time cuts. It was just your own self-benefit. There wasn't no benefit in getting out early with these courses. So I took those. And I began to realize there was a change in me, because my family would come and see me, and my sister, she looked at me one day and she said, my little brother done growed up. I say, growed up? I say, I've been a man. What you mean growed up? She said, I can tell you have really changed. My whole focus and thinking had changed because I wanted to be an example to the men I was around, because they were self-destructing. And those suicidal thoughts I was having and all of that, because I knew guys that tried to take their lives on several occasions. And my mama didn't raise me like that. I know better. But I became my own doctor, psychologist. I say the best way to beat the system is to come in the system and come out a better man than the system expected you to come out. Because they expect you to turn like the environment. And they expect you to become the environment because men turn on men. There's violence every day. And for me to live through that 17 years and not one incident, I didn't have one incident. I worked for the staff at the prison, which was one of the most trusted jobs you can have. And to work for the staff of the prison, you normally get labeled a snitch. But I was never labeled a snitch. The gang members, they said, for some odd reason, they took a liking to me. And the word went from prison. I went to 5 different prisons in the state of Indiana over 17 years. And everywhere I went, I was off limits, according to the gang members. And to this day, I'm saying, what happened? How did that happen? I was covered. And this is like a miracle. It really is, because guys go to prison for rape. They don't have it that easy. I never had one incident. And when I had one incident, someone intervened. And I got out of prison, and I look back now, and I'm looking at those times, and I'm saying, my goodness, it pays to live righteous when you're in an environment that's full of turmoil. Because I've seen gang members since I've been on the street, and they still respect me because they thought I was a nice guy. And prison staff, when I was in the prison, one of them, he told me his son was having brain surgery, and he said, hey, Glenn, would you pray for my son? This was a staff member. And I was like, I was so shocked. I was like, of course I will. And he said, the reason I'm asking because every time I come past here and do my count, I see you on your knees praying. I said, well, I done tried everything else. I might as well try prayer because there's nothing else left. And appeal after appeal, after I got shot down, that first appeal, I thought, well, ain't no helping me. I'm done with it. It's over. I got to make it. I give up on the lawyers at that time. And, oh, man, I just seemed like my lawyers just let this happen to me. And I gave up on lawyers, and then my sister came to see me one day, and she said, they were all smiling, just like they're smiling now. And I'm in the visiting room, and they came in there smiling, and I'm like, what's going on? I thought I'm getting ready to get out or something. I'm like, what's going on? No, I met an attorney. And I said, attorney? Are you serious? I said, how much money they want? She said, no, you ain't got to have no money. I said, huh? I sat down. I said, well, who is this? It's a professor at IU. And I said, a professor at IU? That's been my dream. Because I was seeing on TV all the time. I see these guys getting out of prison, these law students, these professors. I'm saying, why can't that be me? I didn't do it. And she brought me the news that day. I went back and celebrated with orange juice. And then one of the guards asked me, Glenn, what's going on? What you know? My music loud, my orange juice. And he's like, what's going on? I said, I got a lawyer. A professor. Oh, my God. And then this was really sad. I got a letter. Now, I had an attorney working on my case. And this attorney was recommended by the Innocence Project. And he took the case pro bono before I met Professor Watson. And he had just sent me a letter telling me that my chances were hopeless. He had sent me the worst letter I ever read in my life. I got that letter, I sat on my bunk, and I began to write this attorney. And when I read the letter that I wrote him, I threw it in the trash because it wasn't good. So I rewrote the letter, and this time I just told him, I said, if you're not going to help me prove my innocence, leave me alone. Don't even write back. And I never heard from him again. And Professor Watson came that following month. And when she walked in the door, she said, you don't have to convince me of your innocence. I wouldn't be here if I thought you were guilty. Oh, man, I like to fell out. Somebody other than my family saw my innocence. She changed my whole world. Her and those 5 students I met that first day. They changed my whole world. It's so many burdens were lifted off of my shoulders because even though I was living righteous, I still had burdens of being known as a rapist. That hurt me. I respect women more than you can imagine. I was raised by women. You know, that's what I used to think. How could I be even caught up in this? But when she gave me that information that day, it was, oh my goodness. I told her, I said, but you know, I have another lawyer. And she said, well, don't worry about that. I said, okay, I won't worry about it. And she began to work. And oh, what I forgot to tell you is that lawyer also, in that letter, he also told me that I was being offered a deal. And the deal was, I had been in the prison almost 10 years then. And now the deal was, if I admit that I done it, they would get me out of prison. And if I said that Mr. Pinkins was with me when I done it, and named 3 other people that worked at the steel mill, they could give me what they call a time reduction, and I can get out within the next month or 2 and be free. But of course, that wasn't going to happen. I'm not that type of guy. I would rather take my chances with Professor Watson, and I did. And it paid off in the long run because we fought for a long time. And when she told me about Dr. Hampikian, I was just so blown away because he could see that the mixtures didn't have my markers in it from the test they done in the 90s. He saw that. But to the courts, that wasn't good enough. And it was a second scientist from Cellmark Laboratory. He saw it. But that was their opinion, I guess, because they didn't want to hear that. And then Professor Watson said, well, we got to test that hair, Glenn. That's, you know, if it's your hair, it's going to put it in. If it transferred off your cloth. I said, Professor, test that hair. It's not mine. And she said, okay. She tested that hair, and it wasn't mine. I knew it from the beginning. You can't make a person be somewhere they wasn't. You know, you can convict me of it, but I'm not going to admit to it because I didn't do it. So with all of this scientific testimony, and it's from the lab that they use, Cellmark, that wasn't good enough for Indiana. And when I was in the courtroom that day, reporters, everybody was there expecting me to get out, and the judge denied me. I told everybody, don't worry, I'll be home in another year anyway. I done made it this far. You know, ain't no turning back now. I'll be home in 1 year and a half. So whatever they do, they can't stop that out date. Only I can stop the out date if I act foolish in the prison, which that wasn't going to happen. So upon my release date, 2009, I was released. And they were there, as they promised. And the sad part about my release was I was now a convicted sex offender, and I had to attend therapeutic classes. And in these classes, I had to sit with a bunch of guys that told their stories on what they'd done to their victims. And when it became my turn, the therapist, I looked at him and he looked at me and said, okay, Mr. Glenn, what did you do? And why did you do it? I said, I ain't do nothing. And he said, what? Do you know you could be violation of your parole if you don't admit to your guilt? Violate my parole. I didn't do it. And after that day, well, that evening, he took me to the supervisor, and I repeated that to her. Then she said, well, you better get me an attorney letter from an attorney this week, or your parole going to be violated and you're going back to prison. I called Professor. I said, Professor, they trying to lock me back up. She said, what, who? And I told her the story, and she wrote a letter, and they left me alone. I still had to attend the classes, but I didn't have to admit to any guilt. That was probably the saddest part of this whole ordeal, because I had to sit there and listen to crimes against children, crimes against women, infants, and it saddened me to see that people are really this sick, but they need help. They really need help. I met guys that told me they were sick, and prison wasn't helping them. Some guys refused to leave the prison because they was afraid they was going to hurt more women. And I realized this is a real disease. This is sick. But my mission now is not to dwell on my sufferings, but use them to try to help other people. And now that we have something like TrueAllele, it's going to be great for the future. But what about all the mess we're leaving behind, the mistakes? Because I know Glenn and Pinkins were not the only two men sitting in prison that were innocent. And I'm wondering, is there going to be any attorneys that reach back and look back at some of their cases and say, well, hey, let's try this. Let's give Dr. Perlin a call. Let's see if these guys are innocent. Because we know, for one thing, the forefathers' intent with the laws were to keep norms in society and to protect the innocent. And when they would have these laws and they seen where this need to be tweaked or that need to be tweaked, they would fix it. Because the whole intent was to protect the innocent. All the innocent, not just some, but all. So now that we know that there are mistakes, because we hear about these wrongful convictions all the time. This is not new news. But you never hear nothing else. That's why I'll go anywhere, anytime, and talk, because I don't want to be the forgotten person of the legal system errors and never say nothing if I have opportunity. Because there's so many people out there in the prison that needs a voice out here, that are innocent. I'm not talking about everybody in prison is innocent, but there are men in there innocent crying for help because of the 80s, the junk science, and it's a report. Everybody know the most things that cause wrongful convictions, junk science, jailhouse informants, and misidentification. This is the problem, and we need to address it. Not just sweeping under the rug like it's not happening. And it's going to take all of us, everybody. We got to come together, and we got to be grown-ups and come together and fight this stuff, because it's a new disease that's destroying families. My children, we don't even hardly know each other. And that's sad. I love them to death, and we don't hardly know each other. We respect each other. They still treat me, I'm dad, but when we get around each other, it's like we're strangers. My kids now are in their 30s. They lived a life without a father. Now they're trying to see, well, how do we adjust now? Well, you're grown. I got a grandbaby I just met. She's 12 years old, and she was in Ohio, but her mom has moved closer to Indiana so I can start building that relationship. Because ours basically is gone, except for what we're doing as adults. You know, and we got to put an end to it some kind of way. I know it's no perfect system, but people like Dr. Perlin, Dr. Hampikian, Professor Watson, they need help all across this country. Not just Indiana problem, this is all across the country. We need to save these families. I have a great family. They missed me for 17 years. I can't get it back. And I'm trying to rebuild my life now. I have no pension. I don't have anything. I mean, I'm laughing, but it's serious. I don't have anything. I'm starting a new life in my 40s and 50s. What do? You know, pretty soon I'm going to be in my 60s. Like Mr. Pinkins, he's 65 today. He's 10 years older than me. And we lost our pensions and everything. So what do we do now? But what we're doing now is just continuing to work. I do have a job, and I'm working every day. The state of Indiana charged me with rear child support, garnishing my checks. But, you know, what you gonna do? You know, but thankfully, I made my last payment last month. I made it. So I just want to thank you all for giving me this opportunity. And I hope that we can all come together and get serious about this injustice, because it's destroying American families and it's ruining families. You know, I look at my girls, I have 2 daughters. And I love them to death, you know, and they love me too. And it's sad. It's really sad. You just don't know what it's like knowing your children grew up mad at you because they didn't know why you wasn't there. One of my daughters told me. You know, they know about the prison thing when they were little kids. They didn't understand that. They just know daddy wasn't there. Everybody else's daddy was at the game. Everybody else's daddy was doing this. Where's my daddy? They grew up mad at me for something I didn't even do. You know, that's hard on little children. So when you have a wrongful conviction, you have generations affected. It's not just me. My mom was affected. My sister was affected. My children are now affected. My granddaughter is affected. It goes on and on and on. And now I can stand up here and talk to tomorrow, but I'm decent and in order. You cannot tell this story in an hour, because I skipped a whole lot of stuff. But Mr. Hampikian is next. Dr. Hampikian is next. And I am not going to mess with him. I said I would never come back in the courtroom. But when I got these 3 with me, my friend, Dr. Hampikian and Dr. Perlin, I'll go in any courtroom, any day. But thank you all for listening to me.
Thank you, Roosevelt. Thank you all very much.